Hey Angels and Biscuits, CSDL here, and today's video is going to be my Scream 2022 review and re-ranking of the films to include this one. So before we get started, disclaimer, there will be spoilers in this video, so if you have not watched Scream 2022 and don't want to be spoiled, go watch the movie and then come back and watch this video. That being said, let's jump right in. So, first thing I want to talk about is something I saw online, and I saw a lot of people saying how original this movie was, and I am going to hard disagree with that. I think that this movie felt like the first four, like it took things from the first four and incorporated them hard into their story. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I think what they did, taking bits and pieces from the first four and using them in this movie, was a good way to pay homage to Wes Craven, which is what this movie felt like to me. It felt like a homage to Wes Craven. And what I mean by that is like take the opening sequence, for example. That is obviously a parallel to Drew Barrymore's opening sequence in the first one. The killers, Richie and Amber, met online, which is what happened in the second film. The killers also had a very similar motive to the killers in Scream 4, and like in Scream 3, they are tying it back to Billy. Well, the whole plot's tying it back to Billy, just kind of like in Scream 3. That being said, this was a fairly predictable movie, and I think part of why it was so predictable was because they were taking things from the first four and, using them in this film. So I think it did make it a little bit more predictable than it could have been, but it was still very well done. They incorporated the things very well. I think it made the movie fairly predictable. And some of those things I predicted in my trailer review, which I will link. I wrote a blog. I will link that blog in the description. So even some of that predictability could be found in the trailer, but it was still enjoyable despite being fairly predictable. The kills were predictable, and the killers were predictable, but it was still fun. Going a little deeper with the predictability, the boyfriend Richie, like the first scene we have with him, I was whispering to my boyfriend, oh, he's a killer, he's one of them. I don't know what it was, like his vibe was just, yep, it's me. I don't know if it's because it was already having so much of the first four films vibes coming through, and you never trust the boyfriend in a Scream movie, so right there makes him suspicious. But like right away I was, yeah, it's him, it was him. And the friend Amber, who she seemed so obviously the killer, I didn't want to say it was her, but I'm like, it's probably her, and it was her. So she was pretty obvious too. And the kills themselves, you could see them coming. It wasn't a surprise when it happened, but they were very good kills. Something I do want to emphasize about this movie, I really, really loved the kills. They may not have been a surprise, but they were creative and well done and more gory than the previous Scream films, and I loved it. I loved everything about the kills in this movie. Speaking of kills, or rather lack thereof, let's talk about the opening sequence now. It was a very good opening sequence. It was very well done. I loved that opening sequence. But there's this part of me, right, that was super disappointed when Tara didn't die. Like, every opening sequence has had someone die, right? Until this one. She lived. She didn't die in the opening, and I was a little disappointed. Like, I wanted my opening sequence death, and it did not happen. But despite my disappointment that nobody died, it was a high stakes opening sequence that I think we haven't seen in a Scream movie since the first one, and it was great. It was basically paying homage to the first one, and I loved it. It was good. It was good. It was great, entertaining, high stakes. I just really wished someone would have died. I, you know. Also in this film, a complaint that I've had since the second film: too much stab. Like, I get Scream as a meta franchise, like they love to poke fun at themselves in horror movies and the horror genre. Like, they like to be meta about it, but I think they need to dial it back just a little bit. Like, it was still too much for me. Let's jump back to talking about some of the kills for a moment. Like I said, they were creative and a bit more gory than the previous films, and I loved that. But the most the biggest kill, the one that hits you the most in this film, is obviously going to be Dewey, especially for fans of the first four films. You know, Dewey's death is going to hit the hardest. Um, I really enjoyed that sequence with Ghostface and Dewey. That was a very enjoyable fight scene, though I know there are some technical issues with that scene because the ghost face that Dewey fought was Amber, the smaller, you know, of the two killers, and uh, there's some unrealistic things about that sequence, but despite that, I still really enjoyed it. Um, a lot of emotional damage there because Dewey is Dewey and we love him and he's such a sweet character, and seeing him die is just a lot of emotional damage. This will tie us into me talking about the characters now, because none of the other kills really had a lot of emotional impact, because I think most of their characters did not stand out. They were not very memorable. Most of the characters in this film were kind of blah. I mean, I did really enjoy Randy's niece, her character. She was fun, she was good, but even she didn't stand out as much as I would have liked her to. But out of all the other characters that weren't like Sam, Tara, Richie, or Amber, or the OG cast members, um, Randy's niece was probably my favorite. I also don't remember her name. I don't remember anybody else's name. So that's going to tell you something about those characters, that they really just did not stand out. And, Sydney, Gale, and Dewey kind of, I think, could have been written in better. They felt a little forced, like, oh, we need them here, but they didn't really write them in properly, I guess. So that brings us to Sam and Tara. Tara did not really stand out to me either as a character. I think part of why Tara does not stand out is because she spends so much of the movie in the hospital. Like, in her opening sequence, she's amazing. I really loved her in the opening scene. But after that, she kind of falls flat for me. And I think a lot of that is because she's just stuck kind of in the hospital. Sam is an interesting character. Like, I like Sam. And I really like what they did with having her hallucinate Billy. And I'm always here for a Skeet Ulrich cameo because he is amazing and I love him. But my issue with Sam, while she is a great character and she's probably one of the best characters in this film, is she kind of feels like Sydney, but Sydney light. Like, they tried to make her a Sydney-esque character, and now she kind of feels like Sydney light. Like, if I was going to pick Sam or Sydney, I'm going to pick Sydney. So I do wish they kind of separated her a little more from a Sydney-like character than what they did. Like, I think they could have distanced her even more from Sydney. Like, they still tried to make her just too much like Sydney, and That was my biggest issue with Sam. I still love her, she's still great, but that. So last on our characters would be the killers, Richie and Amber. Amber, I can barely remember her name on a good day. I have it written on my notes. That's probably the only reason I'm remembering it now. She did not stand out to me at all as a killer. Like, there was nothing remarkable about her. Richie was interesting and fun. Like, I loved his character, but like their motives as killers were so dull. Like, why can't a Scream movie give me killers with motives that are not dull? Like, Billy and Stu's motive, well, Stu's motive was just Billy, but Billy's motive was, I think, our best one that we've had so far that wasn't either boring or just too over the top, right? Like Roman, we're talking about Roman when I say over the top. Roman was way over the top. And everyone else was kind of dull, or I needed something more from the character for the motive to make sense. That would be Mrs. Loomis. Her character was great, but her motive missed the mark for me. Anyway, so motives dull, and the motives reminded me a lot of Scream 4, and I really wish that was not the case, because that was one of my least favorite things about Scream 4 was the dull motives from the killers. It was just, I want my 15 minutes of fame, and that's essentially kind, like what we had here, like 15 minutes of fame. I want my fame. That's such a dull motive. Like, come on, Scream, we could do better. We can. I know we can. So we had dull killer motives once again. Let's jump to the ending sequence. So in Scream, the two, best points of the movie are usually the opening sequence and the ending sequence, because that's when we get the killer reveal and the showdown with the protagonist and the killers. And I really had hoped for more out of this one with their ending sequence, but I was honestly a little disappointed. And why I was disappointed was because there was just too many people in the room. That is a problem I think they could have easily avoided. Let's break it down for a minute. Okay, so we had Richie, we had Amber, the two killers, and then we had Sydney, Gail, Sam, and Tara. We had 6 people. That is way too many cooks in the kitchen. And it really impacted the reveal and the killers, I think, because in the previous films, aside from 3, because they were dumb and didn't have 2 killers, but in 1, 2, and 4, we had a betrayal, right? The killers betray, one of the killers betrays their partner. Billy betrays Stu, Mrs. Loomis betrays Timothy Olyphant's character, whose name is blanking me, and Jill betrays Charlie. I think it's Charlie. I never remember which cinema guy was the victim and which one was the killer, but I think it was Charlie. But there's a betrayal. There's betrayal, and I did not get my killer betrayal in this one, and I was disappointed. And the reason we didn't get a betrayal is because we had too many protagonists in the room, and they were able to deal with the bad guys much too quickly or much too easily, because there were 4 of them and 2 of the killers, and the balance of power was not in their favor, like the killer's favor. It was obviously in the protagonist's favor. So we did not get the betrayal that I was hoping for, waiting for, really. I wanted Richie to betray Amber. Like, I feel like Richie was the dominant personality. Like, most of the killers, one of them is the more dominant personality, because in the other films, there was always one killer that was the more dominant personality, and I was just waiting for Richie, who I think was the dominant personality, to betray Amber, and it didn't happen, and I was sad. But But what I was not sad about with this ending sequence was Sam's overkill with Richie. That kill was beautifully done. Like, I really loved how she went from, you know, I am I am not this guy's daughter. I am nothing like him to, you know what? I'm gonna embrace my father for a minute here. And she just went overkill on Richie with stabbing him. It was definitely overkill. But I loved it. It was great. It was best Sam moment of the film, in my opinion. I loved seeing her kind of connect with that part of Billy. Like, that's an interesting character development. And I do wonder if they make more films with Sam and Tara, where they're gonna go with Sam. Are they gonna keep Sam a protagonist? Are they gonna turn her into an antagonist? Because that would be interesting, because there is a lot of question, how much do you inherit from your parents? Would be that psychopathy from Billy eventually win out? Would she become like Billy, her father? And it's just an interesting piece for Sam's character, and I really liked it. And I really liked seeing her go into like overdrive murder mode. It amused me. And it was just a great scene. It was a great moment because, we didn't get a betrayal, but we did have that. So it doesn't make up for my lack of betrayal, but it certainly made the whole ending sequence much more enjoyable. Also, something I was kind of hoping for with this ending sequence, or at the end of the film in general, which now this would be a twist that no Scream movie has done before, and I think would have been a great way to end this film, is to have Tara have been a third killer. I was so hoping, like, when Sam and Tara were in the ambulance together, I was really hoping that Tara would, like, just look at her sister and then stab her. Like, oh, look, surprise, I'm a third killer. There was 3 of us the whole time. Heckin' bamboozled. And we end the film there with Tara alive and Sam probably alive. I don't think they would kill her. She's supposed to be the survivor character, so we would have not only the survivor who obviously lives, they survive, we would have a killer that survived the end of the film, and we don't know the fate of these 2 characters until the next one. So if you are planning, more of these films, that would have been an excellent way, I think, to set them up, and then it would be something different, something new. No Scream film has done before. 4 almost did this. They let Jill live for a while. They had their reveal scene, and no killer had previously survived after their reveal, and then Jill did. She ended up in the hospital, but obviously she did not make it past the end of the movie. Sydney does win in the end. So I think if they would have had Tara be a third killer, that would have brought something fresh and new into the franchise, and that would be original. That would have been something, no Scream movie has done before, and not only just having 3 killers, but having a killer and a survivor alive at the end of the film. That all being said, I still really enjoyed this film. I don't have regrets going out to the theater to see it. I don't go out to the theater that much to see movies. Like, I never have. It's so expensive, and the popcorn's so expensive. Even though I love the popcorn, everything about it is so expensive, and it's like, why bother when I can just wait and it'll come out on DVD or Blu-ray or come to a streaming service near me. So I don't often venture out to the movie theater, but I am glad I did. I am glad I got to see this film right away. I saw it, I think, opening weekend, not opening day, but that weekend. And it was a very enjoyable experience. It was a very good movie. I think it did excellent in paying homage to Wes Craven and his first 4 films, and I think it is one of the better Scream movies. Okay, so something I totally forgot to throw in here before we get to the re-ranking is I was incredibly happy that Roger Jackson was still the voice of Ghostface. I loved him in the first 4 films. His voice is so perfect for Ghostface. I am beyond happy that they brought him back for this. Okay, so on to the re-ranking. Which brings us to, where does this film fit in my ranking list? So previously, our list was 1, 4, 3, 2. Now, I did struggle with this, honestly. Like, I struggled where to put it. I struggled because I want to put it in second or third. It has a lot of similar feelings for me that Scream 4 did. And what I liked about Scream 4, I didn't like about, Scream 5 or Scream 2022. And what I liked about Scream 2022, I didn't like about the 4th one. And so it's essentially competing with Scream 4 for second place. How I would rank them is honestly very similar. Uh, so it's pretty tough for me. I struggled. But I think for this video, since we have to put it somewhere, it has to take a spot, I think I am going to put it in second place. I will demote the 4th one to third. But just know that they are pretty interchangeable for me. Like, I feel pretty similarly about them both. While it was good, it's still not better than the first one in my opinion, but I think it does merit second place. Or third, it really depends, I guess, on my mood, but for this video, as of right now, I am gonna give it second place, which leaves us our final ranking of Scream 1 at the top, then 5, 4, 3, 2. Which I don't know what that says about me having that particular ranking order, but anyway, that is my review for Scream 2022 and my updated ranking of the Scream films. If you would like to read my more in-depth thoughts on the movie, I will link my blog review in the description when I have that up. But that is all I had for you guys today. Let me know what you thought of Scream 2022 in the comments, or just the Scream franchise as a whole. It is my favorite horror franchise, so I am always up for talking about it. I'd also really appreciate it if you left a like, a comment, or subscribed, and I will see you guys next time.